Welcome to the Telstra Digital Transformation event in partnership with Microsoft and Calibre One. My name's Phil Park. I'm the General Manager for Telstra Premier Business in North Queensland, and I'll be your MC for this morning. Thanks for setting aside your morning to spend time with the Telstra, Microsoft and Calibre One team. We certainly appreciate that, and we expect that you will be provoked in your thinking and go away with some great ideas about your business today. Clearly there's an interest in digital transformation, hence your presence today. But I wonder whether it's because you're curious about digital transformation, what is it? Or perhaps you're apprehensive about transformations that perhaps your competitors might be making that would impact your business. Or perhaps you're enthused about the possibilities that you're about to unleash on your market through transformation. Whatever it is, that's the reason why we have assembled a group of thought leaders and experts here today to make digital transformation real, to make it practical, to give you insights about how it might be applied best in our region, in your organisations. We've a number of speakers today which we will introduce progressively through the morning, and they will share insights of their component of this transformation opportunity in this part of the world. We'll run through till lunchtime, and there'll be an opportunity for breaks and networking in between. But we'd love you to pay attention, because there will actually be a quiz and there will actually be 4 Xboxes up for grabs as a prize. So a little more on that later on, but I would pay attention to the link down there on the screen, and we'll show that again later as one of our guests will step through the quiz in a later presentation. Our CEO, Andy Penn, made this statement some time ago about the new digital world. At the time, people might have thought it was a little bit provocative. Now we see it as being absolutely conservative and founded in fact. And so, before we kick off the event today, I'd like to invite Andrew Wildblood, Executive Director of Telstra Premier Business, to the stage to make a few opening remarks. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Phil, and great to be back in far north Queensland. Never a hard ask to come when people say, do you want to come here or do you want to go somewhere less glamorous around Australia? It's always, yes, I'll be here. So for us, transformation's big as well. I mean, Andy Penn's put a comment on there. It probably doesn't quite come through with what we're doing as an organisation as well. You know, you may have seen it, you may be a shareholder, but you know, we're sort of committing well over $3 billion of additional capital, and we normally spend sort of circa 4 or 5 billion a year on our networks and infrastructure to basically transform our business, because many of you are Telstra customers, have been probably for a long time. Dealing with Telstra is not always a painless experience, so to speak, if you're a consumer or a business, and many of that's to do with just our history and legacy of 100 years of complicated interwoven systems, and we are very much in the centre of embarking on further investments to sort of enable our network and infrastructure, which is really the lifeblood of anything digital. So as we start to transform to 5G in our mobile networks on our networks 2020 of the future, where more and more video is passed over networks and more intelligence is required in networks, but you need the systems to support it. So we're absolutely right in the middle of a major heart transplant on our transformation on systems. For example, in our part of the business, we're replacing a 21-year-old CRM system with Salesforce. You probably think, well, most people, that's not really new use. But when you start to try to make it flow as a full orchestration layer, prospect to order and all the way through to billing, it's a big task. So we're transforming, our industry's transforming, and every industry's transforming. My job, I sort of look after 12,000 enterprise organizations around the country. And I don't think there'll be a single company that's not considering, or should be considering at least, what it means for their industry. The obvious things that you see, globally, the trends, sort of Airbnb, the largest kind of hotel room company in the world, but it doesn't actually physically own any infrastructure. Or we know the stories of Uber, and you see Ola, another rideshare company from India, arriving in Australia. Every single industry is being transformed. And I listen to my guys in Queensland, and the stuff they're doing with many of you as organisations is really quite progressive. And you kind of think about every industry being touched. We did some work with JJ Richards, a major sort of waste removal company, and they're transforming their business. You think, well, Christ, if waste is being transformed and people need to be more efficient at removing waste and knowing where waste is and the cycle of that, then that really is every industry that's been touched. So the considerations of that, I'm sure today will come through. But for us, you can't do any of it without partnerships, and I think we have realised in our ambition of moving from a telco to a techno, that what does that actually mean? Well, it actually means bringing the best of world-class partnerships together to present to a customer to enable you to have the best technology in Australia to transform your businesses. And I'm about to embark on a trip over to the US. I sort of have another part of my business which they threw me in July, which was to try and build 6 new businesses worth about 300 million is our ambition over the coming kind of 3 to 5 years, where we see what we would call white space, where we see opportunity, where we see industries being transformed, but we still don't know what the answer is yet. So things like the future of payments, or driverless autonomous vehicles in Australia, what does that mean? What's the consideration for councils in that, or for town planners in that, or for legislation in how that may happen? The technology is there, but how do we play a part in that? And last weekend, for example, the East Link in Melbourne was closed down. They do a maintenance once a year, and we flew a drone through with sort of technology on it to map through East Link readiness to present back to East Link on how you could get to an autonomous state within a tunnel. And then we're talking to toll roads on how tolling can be transformed. They don't want the old infrastructure and bridges anymore. It comes down to mobile devices and identity. So across 5 or 6 industries, and I'm going over to the US to look at it, and my trip is really about, what is Google doing? What is Microsoft doing? What's Accenture doing? What are our big technology partners doing, so that we can start to bring it back to Australia and help you in your businesses as you look to be transforming and going digital. And, we're pretty excited that we have partners like Calibre who choose to make the investment here in Cairns, because we just can't do it all on our own. The reality is that we have a set number of resources to try to enable businesses in all of the regions around Australia, and we need partners. And we have a point of view that probably more and more of our work will be done in collaboration with partners, and it won't just be one, it'll be a collaboration of many. And I think today represents that well with Microsoft and Calibre. Microsoft, for example, we're about to bring in the next, which I'm sure we'll share with you in the next few weeks, a pretty exciting world first that Microsoft's never done before with any operator around the world, and that's their Skype and collaboration, but with conference calling embedded in it, which is, and they've never done it exclusively with a telecoms operator. We're going to be the first to market for that, and we'll share that with you. And if you think back kind of 5 years ago to Microsoft, you were principally using Microsoft to buy software and licenses, and they've moved closer and closer to us in terms of being a communications operator providing a full suite of collaboration. So we make sure that we keep all of those relevant relationships that we can bring to you. And with Calibre, we've worked with Calibre. They've been a good partner. I think it's pretty exciting. I love the fact, that the 2 girls, I'm sure they'll talk today, but Hayley and Carly kind of making that journey of, they tell the story. I'll probably embarrass them here, but they were 2 startup in Adelaide, and they literally moved to Darwin, I think with a couple of dogs and maybe a couple of boyfriends. I'm not sure they're with you anymore, but although one's getting married in 2 weeks, in a couple of weeks, but it's not the same bloke that went to Darwin. Maybe that's something about the top end, I don't know. But they packed up and they went up to Darwin and they set up a business up there because they saw a need within Northern Territories. There really wasn't any partners to enable a lot of what the territory wanted. They've proved that model out. One of them went back to Adelaide. That's the one who's getting married, so maybe that tells you something about Darwin. And so you've got the business in Adelaide, you've got the business in Darwin, and now here in Cairns, because there's a market here where, it's ripe for transformation, it's ripe for digital, and they can sit and help and sit at the centre of that. So, it's great that the team, Hayley, Carly and Steve, are investing here in the region because I think it's critical. And of course, they've come together with Airbridge, which you'll hear more about as well. And we do a lot of work, as you would know, and some in the room, with regional and very remote areas where, communications is hard. But required and expected and essential for services moving forward and the economic development of those regions. Airbridge helps us extend some of our networks and technologies to bring it to life. So it's exciting. I think you'll have a good day today. I thank you all for coming. I thank everyone who is a Telstra customer. That's brilliant. If you're not, then you should be. But I'm sure you will be by the end of the day. But really, thank you to Calibre One and Microsoft and enjoy the day. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time this morning to attend our session here. I know your time is very valuable, but I'm sure that you'll get a lot out of the session today. So today myself and also David here from Telstra just would like to talk to you about some stats initially, but also about some learnings on a transformation journey and hopefully those learnings you can take on board and determine, what that means for your business. And I think the other thing is we'll talk about the power of three, which, as Andrew's alluded to, and also Phil, in terms of bringing, world-class people together around solutioning your ideas and your concepts and go to market so you can achieve the vision and the strategy that you desire for your own organisation. So that's our little section, and then we'll morph into, I guess, demything what transformation looks like, and we've got some expert speakers to continue on that front for us as well. So before we do that, we'll just have some stats. Stats are always good, so I'll just cast your eyes to the screens, and I'd like you to consider some things if we can. The 89% there of around enterprises and small businesses looking to digitise rank it among their top priorities. As you sit there and digest these stats, is that the same for you? Does that lean into your organisation, and do you see a real requirement for that to occur? And if it's not at your top of your priority list, why not? And what's the consideration around that? I think secondly, if you look at the right side of that, that's pretty much saying that everybody is thinking about this. This data survey was performed in February of last year, so it's still quite fresh and still quite new. And we source a lot of information from customers to determine what their journey looks like and how they're going, and more importantly, what they're feeling about the market and what does that mean for them. Because not every organisation has a lot of resources to be able to manage this type of transformation. Some may see it as an obstacle in terms of interrupting business, cash flow, etc. Some may see it as an opportunity. So, and then obviously down the left on the 77%, where firms are feeling threatened by digital disruption. And that can be a real threat for those that are moving really fast into market, being creative with how they allow people to talk to them electronically. And if you're not geared to that level, they can outstrip you very, very quickly. So hopefully what we can do for you today here is we'll turn that into an opportunity for you. So we can get rid of that 77%, reduce it dramatically, hopefully in this room, and lean in towards those conversations that, I can do that. That is a reality for my business, and to what that will look like in the same instance. And the 55%, I've met with a lot of customers recently and some very small organisations that have become global very, very quickly with the power of technology. And digitisation is at the heart of that, and that'll drive a lot of that, and also new growth markets for you. So what you didn't think was possible yesterday can be very possible tomorrow, and very simple ways of managing that particular piece. We'll see hopefully a lot of return in terms of the investment, the ROI on that investment, hopefully rapidly ROI on that investment, and more importantly, brand awareness will drive not only within Australia, Australasia, and then obviously globally in the way we head in that sense as well. And just the last piece on the digital fits all sizes. I love outdoor sports. And I went paddleboarding on the Gold Coast, where I'm from, just only a couple of months ago. And obviously, with every activity sport that you do, you've got to have a waiver that, you know, if you fall off or a shark eats you, they're not liable, etc. So rock up to this little area, thinking a lot of forms to fill out, etc. And this lady pulls out an iPad, bang, sign on glass, emailed to me directly, totally seamless, 5-second job. All the T's and C's were done, payment was done electronically, form was emailed to me, didn't sign one bit of paper. So that's a very simple form of digitisation and then allowing a business to grow. And that little business there was turning over probably upward of 200 people in a day, hiring out their paddle boards at a cost of about $20 a pop. So for 2 people running that business, digitisation was a very simple methodology from that perspective. So do any of those stats resonate with the audience today? Who's sitting in the 89%? All of the above? I'll take a nod. Yeah, no, very much so. Are any threatened by digitisation? Are there concerns within the audience about, my business will get overrun by somebody who's more fast-paced than I? Have you ever experienced that in the short term? A few nods in the crowd. Okay, thank you. Question mark. It's a big one. The reason for that is that when you look at where you are today, we all, I think, understand these bullet points here. Static networks, cumbersome processes. I think we all, at some point in our daily job, can't we have a better process? Can't it be leaner? Can't it be quicker? Can I reduce my time? Can I get a 20% efficiency gain? The slow deployment, you've invested, you want to see that return. The return's not coming. How can we quickly get there? You flip that on the other side, in terms of you accelerate your time to market. The global growth, that's a really exciting one. In a world of today where you can get globally very, very quickly, but at the same time it's really, really scary. Because if you don't have the infrastructure behind you, the network behind you, the customer service elements behind you, your brand can be impacted very, very quickly. So yes, that's exciting, but at the same time it can also be a bit scary. I think the other biggest thing is the return either to yourself, private, or to your shareholders in terms of optimising cost. Slow deployment, cumbersome processes equals cost, equals slow time to market. And the other biggest thing is it impacts your customer service and, more importantly, your brand. Whereas optimising cost is good for the hip pocket, but the brilliant customer experience and service that digitisation can bring to a user, especially in this environment, we all like things here and now on our phones. Our network wants to keep up. We are keeping up with that. And that's just where we live today. And the generation that is rolling through want things here and now. And if they have to wait, they'll go to another provider. It's as that simple. And I think harnessing the future innovation, and that's what today is about. So firstly, you've opened your minds up to getting here, so thank you. Secondly, that opening of your mind will continue in terms of what we digest and how we take it on board. And hopefully with the power of 3, which we'll talk about soon, we can bring to you individuals and businesses of expertise that can help coach and guide on that journey as well as part of being in our relationship. What I wouldn't mind doing now is just passing to David. As Andrew mentioned and Phil, Telstra has been on a fairly large digital transformation. It's been a beautiful thing to watch. I've been in the organisation for 10 years, and in that 10 years we've had rapid growth to where we are today, turning more into a customer-led organisation, and we still respect our engineering heritage and our network. But some of the learnings here I'd like to ask David just to run us through, so hopefully we can understand those.
Cool. Thanks, Adrian. Look, there's a lot to think about when you're formalising your own transformation journey. And I just want to run through some of these. Most critically, the right team culture is everything. If the transformation team isn't driven, energetic and persistent, the natural resistance in your organisation will stop things dead in their tracks. But it also means that your organisational culture needs to be open to those changes and the benefits that they bring. Building that together culture is instrumental in ensuring that you drive that positive change. One common mistake is that organisations will leave responsibility for transformation solely with IT, and this is the quickest road to failure. What we found was that although transformation can occur at a micro level, whether it be processes or systems, there needs to be an organisational play and approach to it.
Working in silos, as Adrian mentioned before, will prevent cross-collaboration and improvement overall. But this also leads to the fact that every stakeholder needs a voice in your organisation. You need to listen and incorporate the feedback from everyone that's connected to your transformation, so that it not only prevents those hidden gaps that might appear as you start to make those changes, but the success is built on those people feeling ownership and buy-in to the change that you're bringing. We also found that, interestingly, the Scrum, Sprint and Agile methodologies that are typically found in the development space actually work when it comes to transformation in your organisation. The quick planning, implementing, review, and then that iteration process allows for rapid but also flexible change. And finally, you need to learn to adapt quickly and fail fast if needed. Don't hang on to something that seems right on paper but is failing in practice. It's something that is pretty common across the organisations we work with. So what we found is that our own transformation delivered three things. We stayed relevant to our customers and we stayed ahead of the competition. It's improved our employee engagement and continues to do so. This improves productivity, quality, job satisfaction, and fosters innovation within our own organisation. And it allows us to continue to deliver brilliant customer experiences, which improves retention, growth, and the strategic engagement with our customers. As Adrian mentioned before, just that small paddleboarding company, in the way that it has digitised that process, not only is Adrian now keen to go back and work with them because of the seamless engagement he has, but he's just now told a room of 60 people, and I'm now going to go and tell people that I know that are going down there how great these small companies are because they make life a lot easier for us. These are the simple changes that you can make in your own organisation that will help to start to improve that. And it doesn't have to be a boil the ocean process. It's something that you can look at iteratively. Adrian?
Thanks, David. And do that, because I've got shares in that company, so it's good. No, only joking. So, but certainly still on screen, the culture, I think, is everything. I mean, cultures, for me, is a massive thing. Happy employees equals a reflection to your customers, and your customers will see a happy environment and happy to purchase from you. And I know that's all really important to you guys, because if people are enjoying their job and they're enjoying the systems and what we give them, it's transparent to your customers, and it really evolves from that perspective. And I think if you think about how we go on this journey, this is where we kind of bring in, I'm really excited about this part, as Andrew mentioned and also Phil. We've been building capability consistently both in Telstra and also for the Greater North region. And the opportunity of the Power of Three is really, really strong and really, really delightful to see. And we call it the Power of Three for obvious reasons. One, obviously with the backing of Telstra and our networks and our consistent innovation and what we're performing, we're very proud of our existence and our brand and what we bring to not only our communities but also to our networks. And I think if you combine, I've done a few gigs now with Phil, and I really encourage you to be interactive with Phil. We're going to demyth this transformation thing. It's not a horrible thing to look at. It's not a scary thing to look at. And hopefully, with your interaction with Phil, we can really drive a really great conversation around what's possible for you guys. And we've had a long 8-year alliance with Microsoft, and as Andrew spoke about, Skype, and also I'm an avid user of Microsoft Teams, and it runs really, really well. And the collaboration suite that brings and the calling features that's going to be released soon through our partner is really, really exciting. And I encourage you to look at that. So, Phil, thanks for being here again and your commitment. It's awesome. And then we add Calibre One. I actually Googled Calibre, and this resonated with me. The quality of someone's character or the level of their ability. You get both with Calibre One, right? And I think that's a really awesome setup in terms of the Power of Three and what that brings, because we enjoy being authentic in our communication with you. We enjoy being real, so no furfies. We'll tell it how it is, and that's one of our qualities we'd like to stand by. And the journey mapping is vitally important in a transformation conversation. It's imperative to get that piece right, because if we're not upfront with one another, and if we don't get it right, the suffering is your brand and is your business, and it's your P&L, and that's unacceptable. Right? So we make our absolute commitment to you that with the Power of Three, and what this brings from us to you as our customer, it's our delight to be able to serve you and to make sure that we can deliver on that transformation promise and stick to that account plan and deliver on that. Because your growth is imperative to us, and it's imperative for the region, and we enjoy seeing our regions prosper. And I think the last piece there is that the vital piece in the communication is around that mapping of the account plan. So we have to embody trust, and we have to deliver trust to you to make sure that you're comfortable sharing that information with us around this transformation journey, because it does get quite deep and dirty in terms of some elements to understand where you can get those operational and efficiency gains. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for seeing some stats. I hope they resonated with you. Hearing about some of our journey in terms of the areas of learning that we've got, and culture and a number of those things and silos is a big thing. And my last ask of you is to be really interactive with Phil. He's a great presenter, and just to really get that learning and that understanding of what transformation is like. As I said, the paddleboard, a really simple understanding of where you can digitise a very simple organisation in that instance with a two-person. So it can be 100 or 2, it doesn't really matter. This applies for everybody. So thanks for your time today and enjoy the rest of the session.
As you can tell, I'm enamoured by being here. It's wonderful to be here. Enough about the personal side of things. I want to talk to you about digital transformation. One last question before I get there. Who's come the farthest? Mariba? Tully? No? Anybody down from Cooktown? Mossman?
Got a man from
Marracoon. How far away is that? 800 k's. Fantastic. Well done. A round of applause to you coming 800 k's for today. Thank you. That's fantastic. Awesome. I really appreciate that. When we were in Perth, we had somebody who drove up from Bunbury. It took them nearly all day to get there from Bunbury up to Perth. So it's really humbling to think that you want to come that way far to learn about digital transformation. But what a worthy thing to come and learn about. Right. So let's focus on digital transformation. Find my clicker. So that's me. I'm a technology strategist at Microsoft. Whose IT world looks a little bit like that today? One of those 4. Yeah, there's a few nods out there. Aidan, you're not allowed to nod. But yeah, there's quite a bit out there that looks something like that. Everything from a kind of it's good enough, near enough kind of world to, hey, we bought these things and we're not really going to change them, to, well, just let people do what they want to do. You know, whatever they bring to work, that's fine. Whatever they want to hook in, yeah, that's all good. And let's just put in on an ad-need basis and an ad hoc basis, put these systems together. It's not really the flow state we want you to be in terms of transformation. We want to take some of the words that David quite well put, account cross-collaboration, unifying the organisation and bringing some consistency. So when we look at digital transformation, it's grounded at a technical level on these and remember, I'm a techie, okay, so bear with me. The Telstra guys and the Calibre One guys have got really good messages around the business side of transformation, key element, but I'm going to be more techie, and these are the 2 techie elements to me. The left-hand side, which is mobile first. The example Andrew gave, or Adrian gave actually, of his iPad on his paddling is an example exactly of mobile first, a mobile device in the hand. I'll give you a number. 84% of the devices that access the internet today are mobile devices. They run iOS operating system or they run an Android operating system. They don't run Windows. Windows is that little percentage that's left behind after 84%. Most people these days are accessing services through those sorts of devices. So we have to be cognizant when we're transforming that that's the type of device. And we're looking at this cloud world, cloud first. So our model of bringing services to market is all about delivering them on those mobile devices first. In fact, you'll see the next versions of Office are built for iOS and Android first before they're built for Windows. In fact, the latest drop of Office 365 came out for Mac first. And in the cloud world, we're building our back-end services to the cloud first. So the latest versions of messaging, email, document storage are in the cloud first. So that's our mantra at a technical level. And I want to drill down a little bit further in some of the elements of why. Why are you doing this, Microsoft? Well, part of it's to do with geo-redundancy. Darren, you can't miss him, he's the tall bloke in a blue shirt over there, shared with me a story out of Darwin, where he's based. About a year ago, they lost power for 16 hours. Whose systems went down? Anybody who had local power-dependent exchange servers. Whose systems stayed up? Anybody who had a mobile phone with a battery backed up Telstra tower was able to still do their email because it was sitting in a geo-redundant data centre, one in Sydney, one in Melbourne, and now there's 2 more in Canberra. Why Canberra? Federal government. Because it's highly secure and they wanted some very trusted, secure environments. So I don't know if anybody needs those highly secure Defence Force grade types of services, but that's in the trusted category where we've built 2 data centres there, again with redundant power supplies, failover support, wonderful Telstra cabling to keep us connected and up so that they're redundant connections, etc. Connected and disconnected. Because I appreciate far north Queensland, you're travelling around a bit and you're not always going to get, best coverage in the country is Telstra network, yeah? If you can't get the coverage, go and talk to Doug. He can help you giving some more coverage. But say you fall out of Doug and the AirBridge network, what are you going to do if you're trying to work on something? Well, the cool thing in which we've built this software is to be either working connected or disconnected. And when you do reconnect, it synchronises so that you don't have incompatibilities between systems. I'm now going to move into some more of the more advanced facilities that we're talking about that the cloud brings. Multi-sense, multi-device. What might Phil mean by that? Well, I'll give you an example. One of my favourite examples that actually comes out of Tasmania. We worked with another partner, not Calibre One, but a partner very similar to Calibre One down there, who worked with the local ag environment, oyster farmers. And the oyster farmers were finding with the variation in rain and salinity of the water that was impacting their oyster yield. So by having sensors put into the water system and sensors that were realising the amount of runoff that was going to come down, they were able to adjust their beds. And by doing simple adjustments or early harvesting of oysters, they were able to increase, small businesses were able to increase profitability by from $4 to $6 million, depending on the particular farmer. $4 to $6 million increased profitability in the year simply by putting in these sensor devices wired into our back end called Azure, which runs in those data centres, to be able to monitor salinity, flow of water, and hence know when to harvest their oysters. So that's an example for them of transformation. Transformation in profitability, transformation through technology. AI. Rather than the farmer having to think about what's got to be done, artificial intelligence systems are running in the bank to say, well, we're seeing this amount of water flow, we think that there's going to be more rain in a couple of weeks' time, maybe you need to be preparing for the oyster beds to be adjusted. Not just oyster beds, it flowed into things like asparagus growing, lavender growing, and many other aspects of agriculture are so important to the Tasmanian market, and I think also to the far north Queensland market, right? Mangoes, cane, pineapples, those sorts of things, knowing to be able to predict what's happening with the weather through sensors and artificial intelligence to know when to harvest. And then finally, serverless. What's Phil mean by that? Now, many of you in your business have probably got servers today, yeah? Yeah, I can see lots of nods. Thank you for the acknowledgement. And I go out and say, I bet you treat those servers like you treat your pets. You give them a name, you water them, you air condition them, you cool them, you make sure that they're nicely packed away each night and shut down and started up. You love those servers, and if one of those servers breaks, it's like a loss in the family. Got to go get a new one. Sometimes it takes 9 months to get a new one. Sounds like a pregnancy, just to get a new server. So a new server comes in and we give it another name. Well, in the world of serverless, we don't treat them like that. In the world of big data centres where there's thousands of servers, it's more like a farm full of cattle. And when one of those servers dies, excuse the imagery here, we treat it like a carcass. We just pull it out and throw it away. But that's how we're moving with digitisation and digital transformation. We're moving to a world of serverless. We don't worry about the server anymore. The applications that are being built are not dependent on server A and server B and server C. We build a service and it doesn't matter how many servers are there and whether they're alive or dead, you have enough that keep the system running. And that's the modern world of how applications are built. All right. This is my most challenging slide, and I like to challenge myself. This one is more of a business slide. It's about what we see as the 4 key elements that you as customers are seeking. Firstly, empowering your employees. How can I make my employees more productive? How can I do more in their workday? How can they be productive even when they're not in the office? When they're travelling, when they're at home, even when they're on holidays, maybe you need them to be productive. How can I empower them to have that collaboration? How can I ensure that, versions of documents one person is working on isn't overriding another version of a document somebody else is working on, that we've got consistency? The second one is all about enabling your customers. How can I work better with my customers? You working better with your customers. In many tangents, one, simply understanding who your customers are, but how can I profile them, track them, build them better than what I'm doing today? The third one is a classic IT one, operational optimization. I'm running servers today, energy prices have gone up. What's the energy prices have gone like up in FNQ? Doubled? I was looking at my home consumption the other day because the wife's always on my case. Phil, you've got all your computers running. Shut some down. And I go, yeah. Well, I looked at my energy consumption. It was the same as last year, but the price was twice as much. Yep. And that's what's happening, I think, for businesses as well, right? Energy consumption, price of energy is going up. So what can I do to reduce energy consumption, get more efficiency out of power? And that's one element. But also dealing with scale. Why do you have to go and buy a whole bunch of pets servers to deal with your peak demand? Is there a way that I can do this that I've only got the necessary servers I have for my core operation, but when I have peak tourism season, when I have peak harvesting, then the necessary servers are enabled to me to be able to operate my business. And then I don't need to have those servers that I bought running all the time. So that sort of idea of scale and reliability comes through the third one. And the final one is probably the core one, and Andrew kind of stole my thunder on that one. And that's transformation of your business. That's the whole new business model that you see an opportunity based on what you've got today to create something new as a business. Airbnb the biggest hotel chain in the world, doesn't have any hotels. Biggest movie company in the world, doesn't make movies. Netflix, right? One of the biggest banks in the world doesn't have a bank branch, Society One. I can go on with other examples that exist that have new business that have started up purely because they're born in the cloud. They started with the cloud. Now, don't tie yourselves down because you've got bricks and mortar to the opportunities that might come from transformation, creating new opportunities based on your insights that are out there. Now, over on the left-hand side is what you hear a lot from Microsoft. So that's a kind of classic Microsoft boxes that are on the left-hand side. And the analogy I use here is think of this as going into Bunnings. You go to Bunnings, right? And what's in Bunnings? There's a plumbing section, timberware section, a gardening section, and you go to Bunnings. If you're like me, you go to Bunnings and you end up being there for 6 hours and getting a phone call. Where are you, Phil? I'm only up to aisle 4. Come home, you've got to do the lawns. Okay. But I get lost in all those aisles of products, and you can get lost in all the technology that Microsoft's got, from modern workplace through business apps, all the way through applications, infrastructure, and data and AI. Now, I haven't put any product names in there. Some of you are probably doing the mental gymnastics of, well, what are the bits that Microsoft's got that fit in each of those boxes? Anybody have a go at where do you think Office 365 or Office might fit in those 4 boxes on the left? Which one of those boxes? Who's going to have a go? No Calibre 1 people allowed to answer. Modern workplace, yes. So Office sort of sits there. So our server technologies, Azure and Windows Server, where do you think they might fit? Third one, apps and infrastructure. Some of the things I told you about with the oyster farming, where do you think that might be? Down the bottom. That's the IoT type stuff. All right, so all those aisles, like at Bunnings, there's lots and lots of technologies that we make across those spectrums on the list. Now, what's this? Do you like that? Good transformation? Good. I can do it again because it took a long time to make it. Watch. Cool. I like that one. I like it too. Took a while. Feedback to PowerPoint development team, you need to make this easier. So, and why did I render it like that? Well, I rendered it like that. I transformed it and animated it like that to show that those customer requirements are not satisfied with one line of Bunnings, with one row of Bunnings. There's multiple elements that come from the boxes on the left that satisfy the needs of you as a customer on the right. So take the extreme right, transform products. Obviously, we're building something new, so there's going to be lots more from the bottom boxes on the left around using Azure, using IoT services, using data services that sit there. But at the same time, you're still going to need to communicate to customers about what's going on, what you're charging them for. So that's coming out of the second box. And you're possibly going to communicate to them via email. We're going to collaborate internally. So in the modern workplace box plays a role as well. So what we're trying to do is create connectedness across those 4 boxes, ease of management across those 4 boxes, so that you can get the benefits for as a customer in any one of those circles at all. So I have a little video here, and Darren pushed me on this one. He said, Phil, I want to see this little video because I think that it's going to really set it up well for where we see many of the customers in Cairns today. So let me just roll the video. brought back memories. 1983 Multiplan. No, you're not old enough to remember Multiplan, are you? I am. That was just before I got married, Multiplan. I definitely remember working with that one. I wasn't a Microsoft employee then, but I was in the next scene, which was the 1990s. So I was definitely part of Microsoft then. So, yeah, interesting, isn't it, to look at that journey, and towards the end, the sort of technology that was being represented around collaboration is very much what Andrew Wildblood from Telstra was referring to, is that collaboration and telephony services. We have a very unique partnership coming with Telstra, and our Calibre One friends will be able to help you with that. But my friend Darren again, he spurred me on with creativity, and hence this slide, which is uniquely for you guys. Feedback we had was, you know, talk to some of the elements that you may be wanting in your world. The feedback we had from Darwin and Adelaide from presentations was, well, these are kind of the problems that we face with these IT solutions, not just Microsoft, but any vendor. We need it to be simple. If you're using our technologies today around licensing, potentially you're buying it with a PC, and every PC's got a unique key, and the PC's got to rebuild, you've got to go find the disk and reinstall that particular disk. What a pain. So it needs to be simple to be able to install that software again, regardless what that PC is. So making it user-centric is where we've moved to. So based on who the user is, we've moved to that model. That user signs into that computer, and they're able to have all the necessary software built. I don't have to have a VPNs to get access to my corporate data. You know, that server, that pet that's in your building, you've probably built VPN networks to do that. I don't need all the pain of setting up VPN, the expense of setting up VPN. I just want to be able to get on in a free Wi-Fi access in a pub, in a hotel, and I'm travelling through my fabulous Telstra phone. I want to jump on my Telstra phone, and it connects me straight in over that awesome network to be able to access resources without having to do all this VPN stuff. I want bigger mailboxes. Often you configure mailboxes in your servers today, which are what, about a gig? About a gig? A few hundred meg, maybe? You move to the cloud, 50 gigabyte mailboxes, monstrous mailboxes, and it's all sitting not on storage you need to buy, but it's sitting in the cloud. Failover, uptime, compatibility, offline, online access. So these are the things that we're trying to address, and we are addressing with models in and around what we call Office 365. So how are you guys in understanding what Office 365 is as a piece of technology? You all understand how that gets installed? No? Okay, I'm happy to give you a bit of a segue on how it happens. So you know we had Office, which was Word, Excel, PowerPoint. Sometimes you'd buy a version that had Outlook in it as well, yeah? And that maybe came in a box on a disk like Jeff Hayes showed you earlier. When you want to install Office 365, it doesn't come on a disk anymore. You go to a website, you go to the Telstra homepage, and you go to their marketplace, and you say, I want Office 365. Part of a plan. They've got some good plans they offer. And then you get an email to whatever your free email system is, and it says, click here. You click here on that link, and it starts to install Office on your computer. For you, for your colleagues, for all your staff, all they're doing is clicking on a link, and now it starts to install. And how long do you think you have to wait before you can use it? Hours? No. If you've got a reasonable network from Telstra, you'll be able to use it. Come on, what would you recommend? A 2020 network? Of course you like your 2020, don't you, Brenton? 20 up, 20 down is a nice network to have. But even over a DSL connection, business grade DSL, you'll be able to start using an element of Office in about 3 minutes. You don't have to wait hours. It actually starts to install the bits you want first. So if you want to use Word first, you click on the Word icon, and it brings down all the bits associated with Word fast so you can start working in Word. Maybe you want to use Excel first. Well, you click on the Excel icon. Don't click them all at once because it's going to take about 30 minutes. So that's not the idea. But you want to work in something productively, you're able to get in there very productively. And it's all based on who the user is. It's not mucking around with disks, and it's not trying to remember keys and putting them in. And we've now coupled that under this, oh, I should save myself or get ahead, to also bring that into Windows 10. So if you're putting Windows down, that same idea is built. So you go down to Calibre 1 and say, I need some new computers. They can help you on choosing the right sort of computer for the right sort of staff member. They get that new computer from via the OEM. Guess what the OEMs, you know what I mean by an OEM? Yep, some of you do, some of you don't, so I'll explain. OEM is the original equipment manufacturers, so people like HP, Dell, Lenovo, Microsoft is the Surface. When your business buys those computers, a message is sent to Microsoft so that we know that a staff member from your organisation is going to use that asset. As soon as they turn that machine on, type in on that sign-in bar their username and password, guess what happens? It gets pre-configured to the policies and the applications you've defined for your business user. And that could be third-party apps, not just our apps. It could be things like Adobe, Salesforce, Google. It will actually configure that computer to the experience that you want for that user without you having to go and install those from different web pages, because what we've done with a technology called Windows 10 Autopilot. Pretty cool. So let me take you on a journey beyond Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook in Office. We've had a pretty exciting time the last few years as Office and the naming of Office 365 now gives you lots much more. And I haven't got the full list there. Basically, we have this thing called the waffle. It's like a Channel 9 logo that sits in the top corner of a web page. So if you go to office.com, you'll see, and you've signed in, it'll have a little waffle like the Channel 9 logo. Click on that and this comes up. Look at that bar on the left-hand side. The wealth of services you're getting when you sign up and move from Office to Office 365. You're getting planning, OneDrive, SharePoint, task management, project management, planner, BI, blah, blah, blah. Look at them all. There's heaps there that you're getting in the box that you can start to examine. I'm going to look at a couple in a bit more detail, and you can go back and have a look at the others yourself in your own time. Flow. Amazing piece of technology. I imagine all of you in business have got different systems, yeah? So some are using MYOB, some might be using QuickBooks, somebody might be using Pronto, somebody might be using SAP, somebody else might be using Oracle, or maybe you're even using combinations of those products. And how are you transforming the data between those systems? Manually, possibly. Flow enables you to connect one data source to another data source and transform it, make it relevant to another form. Forms. That little URL that was shared earlier by Adrian, aka.ms/MDTR. Try it now. Go to your phone, pull it out, type that in as your browser. There's one man who's going to give it a go. Thank you. There's a couple more. Awesome. Give it a try. aka.ms/MDTR. What do you reckon MDTR stands for? Oh, come on, Darren, you can't answer that one. Making digital transformation real. How'd you go? Did it come up? That's a form. So Carly and I sat down, she's left the room, and figured out what we wanted to get as feedback from you. Took me 2 minutes to create that form and then make that available to you through that little link so I can capture your names to win a prize, but to get your areas of interest through using forms. Why go and have to buy SurveyMonkey or some survey company when you've got the tool right there in your hands to go and create a simple form that works? And I see some of you on iPhones, some of you on Android phones, some of you on PCs, and that form works across all those different devices. I only had to write it once, took me a couple of minutes, and there's my survey done. Things like Teams. I've got some slides coming up on Teams. Teams is an amazing way in which to start collaborating. Any of you got millennials in your organisation? You know? Yeah, there goes a hand. David's hand goes up. He's a millennial. And you love doing that whole chat and embedded communications and documents being shared, that whole Facebook type experience, but I want it in a business context. So Teams gives you that, the ability to have that conversation preserved, maintained, consistent, the ability to create a document. I create the document, I talk to my team members about the document, other team members can now jump into the document and start editing it. Do I have to wait till they finish saving? No. You can now co-author a document. 2, 3, 4, 5, keep going. People, there is a limit. Co-editing that document, working on different parts of the presentation, and we're not suffering from the nightmares of version management. Somebody saves it as V1, same saves it as Darren, another bloke saves it as Phil, and then we go, but yours is different to mine, now I've got to put it all together. We can now collaborate, simultaneously co-author a document by using Office 365 and the power of the cloud to bring that together. Power Apps, I'm going to demonstrate that, analytics and cloud security. Phil, get on with it. I'm conscious of time. And if you want updates, there's a really good little YouTube that runs. Just search for a monthly Office 365 updates. Jim Narosky, he does a beautiful little 10 to 12 minute update on the new features you get. So what am I saying in that point? You don't have to wait 12 months or 2 years or till you buy another computer to get all the new facilities and capabilities. Every month, new facilities, new features are being dropped down over that wonderful Telstra network onto your iPhone, onto your Android, onto your PC, onto your Mac with those new capabilities. And then you've got consistency. Everybody's using the same version because you're now using the cloud and the network to keep you concurrent and up to date. And if you want to know what the new features are, a little box pops up and says these are the new features. But if you want a nice, simple representation, Jim does a wonderful job in about 12 minutes telling you what the new features are every single month. So I'm not going to do the demo because it's too hard to jump and come back and we haven't got a lot of time. So I've just done some screenshots. Here's a screenshot of Teams, and this is a really key one. This is the one we're going to be working with the Telstra guys on. There he's got his Teams up already. Thanks, Adrian. This was myself working with a colleague of mine who was travelling with me around the country. We wanted to understand what my itinerary was. I created a document in Word, stuck it up there. He could open it up, Steve could open it up. He could change that itinerary, he could take the itinerary, make it his own, and so on. You can see on the left-hand side, there's sets of teams that I've joined. And there's a whole lot of cryptic sort of words, but it's relevant to Microsoft, those words on the left-hand side. They're to do with collaboration with colleagues who are technical. They're to do with collaborations with salespeople. They're to do with our HR matters on the left-hand side. You can see some other tabs that are there. Why don't you bring them up? Oh, before I do that, you can see that the documents that are all available within that team can be seen. And all those documents are co-authorable. Where do you think those documents might also be stored? They're also in SharePoint. So some of you have invested in SharePoint in your business, yeah? So it's completely compatible with your SharePoint environment. And OneDrive and SharePoint come from the same family as well. So if you've got personal things you want to share, you can have those on OneDrive. But if you've got community stuff, you can see that they're actually coming from a SharePoint environment. Then if I want to have chats, or this is actually a bot called Who we built. So we created a little bot called Who. Who is Mark Lee? I could type in, click on that particular icon, Who, type in the name Mark Lee. He happens to be my boss's boss. And now I can see who Mark is. I can see who works for Mark, who his peers are, by clicking on in the Teams. And where does that all come from? The directory. You haven't had to build that as an org chart. That's naturally coming as a function of Active Directory or Azure Active Directory, which Office is using. So as you're adding users to your organisation, for security reasons, for single sign-on purposes that I'll get to in a moment, it's also building a hierarchical directory, an organisational chart that is then consumed by services like Teams. Saving you time, making you more productive. Another element of making you more productive is this one. Power Apps. Maybe you've never heard of Power Apps, but you've got to heard of VB, and that's not the stuff that comes in the green can. It's very enjoyable still for me. This is VB as in Visual Basic. Yeah? I see some nods on that one. Fantastic. That was one of my first products I managed when I joined Microsoft. VB was such a popular development environment. So cool. It liberated people to be able to create Windows applications from the old green character on a black background. They're able to join boxes and drop down list box and create apps. Well, that programming model is now in Office. It's called Power Apps. And it's really cool because you can create your own or work with a whole bunch of templates we give you. So what have I got up on the screen? Budget tracker, PDF reader, service desk, asset checkout, a site inspection. So these are some of the template applications. So you could go and buy those from a third party and pay a whole lot of money per user per month. Well, why don't you have a look at the apps that exist in Power Apps Store and maybe even customise them? So here's an example of a service desk. Everybody needs a service desk. So there's a service desk app that sits in Power Apps. Maybe it doesn't meet your needs. So do you stop there? No. Go and talk to Calibre One. They can come in, they can look at the template that's there, adjust it, bring in the nuances and the unique attributes that you need as a service desk application, extend it, and all you had to pay for is their time to come and do it. Or do it yourself and change it and make it available to your staff, because you've already paid for Power Apps as part of Office 365. This is really cool. Analytics. My analytics. I set goals in my life, like fitness goals. I think you need to spend more time out on that kayak, Adrian. 3 months is too long ago. But maybe you've got a Fitbit. In the same way, if you've got your Fitbit set and you've got certain goals about how many hours of running you're going to do, or how many hours of swimming or kayaking or mountain biking. I'm a mountain biker. I do. I can also set work goals around how many hours I spend in meetings, how much time I spend doing email, how much time I spend on the phone. You can set those goals, and Office 365 through My Analytics is automatically tracking that for you. So you can determine your health, your personal health. Moreover, as a manager, you can check the health of your staff. Are people working too hard? Or maybe not hard enough. You can also get a perspective on how are they collaborating. And it's not just sending emails, it's where they're working on documents, where they're having conversations through Teams and Skype for Business, where they've got meetings they've set up with one another. All that is harvested out of the information system that sits behind Office 365 in the cloud and renders that, so you can see that in this case I spent a lot of time when I did this screenshot with that guy called Steve. He's the partner development manager for Telstra, actually. So Brenton's smiling, he knows Steve. So I was spending a lot of time with Steve. But then you can also see after that is all my techie geeky guy friends like Otto and Reed and the others that are there. So I spent a bit of time sharing technical tidbits about what's going on there, as well as what's going on in the latest Star Trek episode. Useful? Was that useful information? Did you know that analytics? No. I can see from the everybody's ready for a coffee and lunch, or I've surprised you all. Well, I hope you do find that information analytics was useful. Here's another dimension, so take a breath, because there's a whole bunch more coming. This is in and around security in your business. And who's not worried about security in their business? Unprecedented the amount of attack that's going on by organised crime units, just bad people out there on the web. Just downright bad people. So we want to detect the threats that are going on. And the other dimension to this is people in the organisation, you just don't know what they're using in their business. Have you heard of shadow IT? It's the idea that somebody in your business is using some IT as an IT manager you don't know about. So how can I find out what that product is? So this technology, Cloud App Security, allows you to get some insight to what applications your users have decided to use. Maybe they've decided to turn on Gmail, maybe they've turned on Slack, maybe that's not a corporate standard, they've turned on Box, they've activated Salesforce. You're trying to run a cohesive, coordinated business, and they're starting to do these silos of activity. So now you've got some insight to what they've started to use in the business. 2 actions. One might be to go and knock on the door and say, stop using that. This is the one we've decided to use as our corporate standard. Please use that. Or, that's really cool. We should standardise across the business on that tool. That Box stuff works really well. Why don't we go get a corporate licence rather than you buying a personal licence, and we'll use that across our business. So it's not all about being the bad cop. It could be that it really gives you some insight to how an element of your business is being productive in the cloud and transform as well. All right. So those were all things in what's Office 365, and I think for some of you that was kind of enlightening that Office just isn't Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and look, yeah, a lot more than you realise is in the box. Something out there? Yes? Good. Now I'm going to take you to the next level. Middle of last year, we announced a bundle called Microsoft 365. So what's in Microsoft 365? Well, first of all, because it's a bundle, what happens? The price goes down. Because you get 3 things in the one box, it's cheaper than buying separately, yeah? But it includes Windows, as well as this technology called EMS. For sake of time, I won't spend a lot of time on the Windows part. I want to spend more time on this one. Going back to that point I made about security. Ransom, Petya, WannaCrypt. Anybody heard of Bad Rabbit? You've probably seen Bad Robot. That's a TV producer. This is Bad Rabbit. You didn't hit Bad Rabbit, did you? It was out there. It was another one of those WannaCrypt viruses. Why didn't you see Bad Rabbit? Because this technology we deployed in a number of customers picked it up, identified it as a threat, sandboxed it into our platform, and within 14 minutes of patient 0, you were all protected if you were using this technology and using our threat models. We also shipped the signatures to all the other antivirus vendors, the Semantics and Trends. By the way, you don't need any of that anymore because it's all built in Windows 10. Within 14 minutes, Bad Rabbit was dead, was annihilated from the networks because of the tough that we put into enterprise mobility and security. Pretty cool. So what are some of the other elements? First of all is that cloud app security I mentioned about. And with that comes also single sign-on. The biggest weakness in your business today is the fact that you are running probably 16 different systems with 16 different usernames and 16 different passwords. And your staff can't remember all those. So what do? They write it down. Or they make them simple to remember. And as soon as one of those are leaked, the baddies, they pick that up and they use it as a step to get to the next and the next and the next. And then you don't realise that on average, about 200 days they exist in your network before you realise they're there. And they've harvested a whole lot of data. They've used it as social engineering tools, infection tools, and the like. So by having single sign-on, one username, one password, it's the same one you use for Office 365, you are protecting your environment with a secure password or a passphrase. I work with the Australian Federal Police on a program called Think You Know, which is educating parents about child safety online. It's one of the key mantras we have with parents is have strong passwords for you and your children. Or now, passphrases, combinations of words that are completely obscure, but for some reason our brains can remember them. Blue scissor, plastic fan, means something to somebody, but you put those words together as your password and it's strong within a bunch of uppercase, lowercase, special characters. Back to the point about single sign-on. 3,500 applications in that marketplace. So if you're using Salesforce, fine. Using Gmail, fine. Using Dropbox, cool. But the same username and password you're using today for your Office 365 can now sign you onto that. One username, one password. What's the side benefit that comes from that? Particularly if you're using social media. And some of you may be in the tourist industry. Social media is an important part of the way you represent your business. Well, it means that if one of your staff who has responsibility for Facebook or for posting on Twitter leaves your business, you've got to remember to remove their account. But if you put them in SSO, you chank them out of Office 365 and they're immediately disabled from all those social media sites as well. If they're a particularly disgruntled employee, they could be disturbing your image out there through Facebook, through Twitter, through those social media environments. So you can remove them once and they're immediately removed from those social media constructs and any of the other business environments as well, so your data is protected. There's that threat analytics I talked about earlier, which is analysing, inspecting. Anybody using Office 365 today, you know that when you get an attachment, what happens with the URL? It goes to some bizarre, you look at that long URL, right? You might inspect that and go, NA01, what's all that about? Or EUR01 or SYD. What's happening is that item is being sandboxed in our servers. It's being opened up. It's being inspected for its malicious behaviour or no bad intent, and we detonate it if it's bad, or we return it to you if it's good. And that all happens as a natural function of these services. You don't have to have EMS to do that. There's elements in Office 365, but more advanced elements come here for non-Microsoft technologies. Azure IP, what's that one? Any of you work with confidential data? Buy companies, payroll data, corporate contracts? How do you protect those today? How do you make sure that they don't get in the bad hands, accidentally get put on a USB stick and handed over to a competitor? By turning on IP, information protection, you define in the document, within the document, who's able to read it. Doesn't matter what device they try and run it on, you can't look at that document unless you have credentials to read it, or read and write to it, or to print it. So that's built into the document, stuck in it. Pretty cool. And then finally, on the right-hand side is this idea of protection of based on where you are, who you are, what device you're using. So these are policies you can set. So you guys travel, and when we're in Cairns, it's all good. We can work with data. Our level of security is at one level. But suddenly you fly off to Sydney. Maybe your phone's going to vibrate with what's called MFA. Anybody want to try and have a go at what MFA stands for? Oh, I heard it. Where was that coming from? Well done. You thought you were whispering it. I got good ears. They're big, but I can hear. So MFA, so that's correct, multi-factor authentication, because you can set a policy to say if somebody's accessing from outside the Cairns location, we're going to increase our level of security. We're going to have their phone ring with a message, and they've got to put in some codes to say, yes, they can open that document, that spreadsheet, or access that file. And that's all about preventing what's called the impossible traveller. You know, somebody signs on in Cairns with your credentials and then 2 minutes later they're signing on in North Korea. That just doesn't make sense. So this is the idea that somebody's credentials have been leaked, so you're able to detect that, prevent them being able to get access to important corporate data. Look, I'm going to jump through these slides because I think I've largely spoken to them. The first one, though, is to highlight over on the right-hand side that single sign-on attribute that I mentioned with thousands of applications, but also protect the investment you've already got in servers running your environment. Something like 95% of businesses use Active Directory today for their servers and their identity. You're not throwing that all away. You're protecting that investment. You're able to connect it up into the cloud. Same usernames, all those policies are protected, but you can get authentication through the cloud when they're travelling without having to come back to your servers. Getting geeky technical. Biggest issue we have, fourth from the bottom, after printer problems is users forgetting their passwords, right? So self-service password resets built in the box. Somebody forgets what their password is, they can go to a simple web page, they can put in some verification details and their credentials are reset and their passwords reset without having to involve one of your staff members. This is one I didn't speak to, but I love, absolutely adore this component. It's an element of the information protection linked in with Intune. I reckon just about all of you are going to nod and say people are allowed to bring their own devices to work. Yeah, good, lots of nodding. So they get their iPad and they're now working on a Word document. If that Word document is a corporate document, should they be able to cut and paste data from that into their personal Gmail account or to their Apple account? Maybe not. You can set policies to say that document must stay in the domain of corporate applications. So you have corporate apps, managed apps, and they've got their personal apps existing on the same device. Certain items you'll flag as doesn't matter. They can cut and paste that into their personal space. Certain data, no, they're not allowed to cut and paste. You know, how does that work? Because we've got clever technology, clever software that says, oh, that document's protected, that app is not managed, you can't cut and paste from your Outlook client on your iPad to the Gmail client on my iPad. And then you go, well, hang on, I'll just take a screen grab. You take a screen grab, no, it just comes out as a blank bar. That blank box, it's just a black blob. Oh, we'll just take a photo with my iPhone of my iPad. Well, guess what's embedded in the image? Your details. So we know if you ever intercept that image, we can dissect that image and determine who leaked the data. Anybody from the local council? When I said that in Darwin, the person was going, yeah, we're in the council, yeah. We can see when one of the councillors might leak some data, we know who it's coming from now. So that sort of thing is now stored in the document as an image. Pretty cool stuff. Look, if you want more, you can pop to that little short URL, aka.ms/Brad_EMS, because I know you've all got 35 minutes free in your lives, don't you? Yeah, absolutely. Plenty of time in your lives. But that video is an awesome YouTube video that in 35 minutes does way more justice to talking about all the capabilities in enterprise mobility and security than I can do in 5. So I do ask, as your homework today, is to write that URL down and go and spend 35 minutes having a watch of Brad Anderson, who's our corporate VP, and EMS, which is Enterprise Mobility and Security. Oh, I knew this was going to happen, didn't I, mate? When we threw the extra slides in, I was going to blow out the time. I'm going to punch through this because I'm very conscious of time. This is just a decision tree that you'll be able to get the slides to around whether you need to use the business version or the enterprise version of, there are 2 versions of Microsoft 365. So you want some of the things that are in that left-hand bar, you may need to go and get the enterprise edition rather than the business edition around device management, around security, and so on. Oh, he's already on it. Brad Anderson, that's good. Look, clue, missed the first minute because it's a really cringe-worthy American recording of where the guy turns up to the movie theatre and he hasn't got his popcorn and he hasn't got his ticket. So just go to the 1.5-minute marker, save yourself 1.5 minutes, all right, on that one. Anyway, so this is an interesting one in terms of your decision tree. Notice a key one in terms of our connection with Telstra is that bottom one, cloud voice through Teams and Skype for Business. It's a business. You can't have it in business, it's got to be in the enterprise category. So you're looking at the E-SKUs if you want to get the stuff that we're going to turn on with Telstra in the not too distant future. There is some rumour that we might bring into business. I can't confirm or deny that rumour, but there's a bit of pressure on us to do it. A big matrix of all the features in each of the different plans. Yes, there's a bit more decision making to have in your business, but these plans will interrupt. So some staff might just be on the E1 SKU, some staff might be the E3 SKU, some staff might be E5 SKU. That's okay, you don't have to have everybody on the same column. Pick your employee. There's even one I haven't even had a chance to talk about today called the F SKU, which is your first line workers, your cash register staff, your bus operators, your people who are out in the tellers. So there's an F SKU as well, which is first line worker, which has got a limited feature set, but at a better price point that you might also want to think about in your modelling. Lots of choices. Bought a little company called LinkedIn. Cost us about $8 billion. Okay. But the point was to provide that connection between what's happening in the office space and what's happening in the business application space. I talked about business applications, billing, accounting, accounts payable, accounts receivable, payroll, HR, talent management, operations, tracking, manufacturing. I can keep going. No, I won't. That there's a whole lot of stuff that sits in the right-hand side under our Dynamics 365 space to do with the operations of your business. And then in the middle, LinkedIn is tying the data elements that exist in the right-hand side, which is customer data, product data, in with the productivity space on the left. So you're not having to cut and paste from one environment to another. LinkedIn is providing a tie, it's providing visibility to your customers. Example. I am a user of LinkedIn. I have flagged Telstra as a company I'm interested in. I know the movement of their staff. Who's left, who's joined in different divisions. Because if they've profiled themselves in LinkedIn, I'm being alerted to those things. I know through LinkedIn, and it comes into my Outlook, when one of the individuals, like a Brenton, does a post in LinkedIn as a blog, it pops up and says, Brenton posted this about blah, and I go, oh, okay. I don't have to dive into LinkedIn. It's notifying me because he's a person I'm interested in. Did you know that? Now I've given it away. Okay. So moving to the end, and I won't be spending as much on the last 2 blobs as I did before, I really just wanted to close around the apps and AI, data and AI, moving from the left to the right. It's about hybrid, absolutely. The protection of those pets you've bought, those servers you bought, the Active Directories you've got. Cool, we protect those, but we are moving those into a cloud, scalable, redundant, resilient environment, which is the cloud. We're connecting the data items together. We're offering you services around IT, cognitive services, so facial recognition, you might know at the airports when your face is scanned. That's our cognitive services. A bit of fun, you might want to go to a site called how-old.net. So I don't know if you want to write that one down. How-old.net. How-old.net. Try it out. And it's doing facial recognition, determining your age based on the image that you share with it. You hope you get it right, right? We've also got one for detecting your dogs. I can't remember the URL for detecting your dogs, but that's all the power that sits inside Azure for doing cognitive services. And, you know, if it can detect your age, it's going to have a pretty good chance of detecting you higher in border control. So this is the sort of technology Border Force is using for doing facial recognition at the airport, these cognitive services. Look, there's a lot that sits in Azure. And if I go back to my Bunnings story, I love Bunnings and I love the fact that I can go and buy my hammer and my nails and I can go and get some timber and a saw and I can make myself a new dog house for my dogs by putting it all together myself. But why don't I just go and buy the flat pack dog house and put it all together? So that sort of solution exists as well. So we've got, I've only given a sample there of some of the classic solutions, which are the kind of instructions, the recipes to how to build solutions there. So if you want to just get the doghouse, there it is. Bang. If you want a DR solution, you want a micro app solution, you want a dev test environment, a digital marketing solution that sits in this Azure environment that you can customize, then there is that solution for you. Customer requirements are core. The networking is at the centre. You've got to have this stuff. The edge, the cloud I talked about, you've got to have a network. Couldn't ask for a better partner in that than Telstra. Thank you. They said it. I didn't say it. Telstra. You happy? Good. So Telstra is our partner in the networking space. Awesome. Your requirements or your customers' requirements, your partners' requirements are going to exist around these sorts of dimensions, which we've covered today. Someone that can help you analyse all of those different requirements around managed services is Carly, Hayley, Joe, Calibre One team, Aidan. Have a chat to Darren, all of them. Steve's there too, hiding in the back. Have a chat to them about how all those things come together to be able to meet the broad spectrum of needs across that connectivity. And we hope that we can empower everybody in your organisation by using these sorts of technologies in those cogs coming together. And I think one of the kind of closing messages is saying that one network, one partner, the Calibre One guys, and one user ID. That's to me the essence of what we're trying to achieve here, is that one username, one password, security, consistency across all those environments comes through what we're trying to deliver you as Microsoft. So there you go, enabling digital transformation. I'm going to run a little quick quiz. Which of these 4 products does not exist in Microsoft 365? No prizes, just personal recognition of memory. Which of these 4 does not exist in Microsoft 365? Office 365, Windows 10, Surface Pro, and Enterprise Mobility and Security. Which does not fit? Well done, you were all paying attention. Sweet. That's really pleasing. Thanks everybody for your attention, and I will pass back to Phil, the other Phil. Thank you.
About 5 or 6 years ago, we started to see where IT was going and that our clients wanted not IT, they wanted technology support, and they trusted us as their technology partner, not just their IT partner. From a client perspective, it's really simple. They have a single point of contact who can talk sense to them about connecting data, computers, all the hardware and skill set they need to do that.
We work on jetties, wharves, dredging activities all around Australia and in the Pacific. We've got very lumpy revenue streams as a contractor, so we wanted to work with a partner who understands our business, understands that we need to be very flexible. We've got a lot of remote activities, so we need technology that can take all that remoteness and make it almost like they're working in the same office.
Technology is not important, it's crucial. There's a big difference. If you don't keep up with it, if you're not innovative yourself, and if you haven't got a good partner, you're going to get left behind.
We started 20 years ago, and very few of the companies we started with are still here today. And that's entirely because Calibre One chose to look at the new technology, be proactive about what was coming and embrace it, whether it was to our advantage or not, as long as it was to the customer's advantage. And then we found a way to make that work.
It's not only services, it's also picking the low-hanging fruit. So identifying where our greatest inefficiencies are. Sometimes we don't know exactly what we want, and we need that help from our partner to refine our understanding of what it is that we actually need.
We started with just a couple of laptops, upgraded that as the company grew to putting a server on. We had the choice of building another purpose-built server room at obviously a significant outlay. That's when we made the decision to move into the data centre. It also reduces our risk and it gives us more flexibility there. We rely on Calibre One to give us that help. They know our business so well. Steve and his team have been helping us for around 20 years. We really rely on their advice, we trust it.
One of the things that stood out for me was that Steve was very empathetic. He knew that if the system went down, we stopped trading. Steve recognised that, and that was critical for us.
We've got a lot of grumpy old sea dogs around. We have some very big personalities around our organisation, which is what makes us us. And so we wanted to have a partner who, could see that, have a bit of fun with us, but still understand our end game. From the tech guys to the sales staff, they all seem to get us.
When we go out and we deal with our clients, they're like the cousins you don't see very often, but you feel an empathy for. And our clients, we feel an empathy for. And just as importantly, we need to play well with our partners. And that means understanding what Telstra need, and then having them trust us to take that message to the customers. And having the customers trust us to take the message back to Telstra. We form a very important and effective conduit between the two organisations.
Culture is paramount, and having an association with somebody that fits that culture is paramount as well.
There you go, and put the intro video. So as the CEO of Calibre One, it's a dubious honour for me to be able to get up here and give you all a bit of a background into Calibre One, and by way of sort of contributing towards the overall theme of digital transformation, we're going to just give you a little bit of info about our journey as a company, and really show you that technology companies even do this to ourselves. But before we get on to that, I do have a small prize here for those who care to listen today. So it's a little Bluetooth headset. I'm going to give that away at the end of my presentation. And it's, I'm going to give it away based on something really simple. So I'm going to show 3 slides through my presentation that have absolutely nothing to do with the presentation. All you have to do is remember the state that each of those photos was taken in. Okay, so there's the first picture, all right? Quintessentially an Australian picture, right? Some of you will probably know where it is. And for those that can read, down the bottom, tells you what state it's in, so it's not going to be a difficult quiz, right? Okay, so I actually like this photo because it's interesting. It's typically Australian. Most of you would see there's even some roadkill in the background there, and it's something I like doing. My wife and I travel around Australia on a motorbike and go and visit things and do things in our spare time. So the picture tells you a little bit actually about why I want our business to be efficient and productive because it allows us a little more time to travel. It allows us to work from anywhere, and I'm sure that's not a goal that I have alone. So to have more time to be able to work from anywhere is probably a common goal that many of you have. Calibre One, as it is today, grew from the merger of two companies, a pretty progressive sort of IT company that's been around for quite a long time, and a very dynamic go-ahead Telespan Enterprise partner. So both of our two companies shared a vision that the future needed technology companies that weren't divided around the traditional lines of IT and telecommunications, and the two who wouldn't talk to each other. So aside from that common vision, the two companies also shared a common and perhaps a traditional starting point for some of the great technology companies in the world. That is, they both started in our garages. So I feel an affinity with Microsoft and Apple because they started in their garages as well. So that was pretty good. So about 18 months ago now, we merged our two companies and we gave life to that common vision that neither of us could really achieve in our own right. And now we're a technology company. We don't talk about being IT, we don't talk about telecommunications, we talk about being a technology partner. And neither of us could achieve that alone. So that was our first partnership. By forming that partnership and condensing it into one, we now bring to the market that capability of really being one-stop shop. We're not an IT company anymore. We're not a telecom company. We're all those things wrapped into one bundle. So here's the second picture. Different motorbike, you'll notice. But this is WA. Okay. So when we merged our two companies, we had a couple of core principles, and you sit down and you do your strategic planning and all the things that you do when you set about a new venture. So we wanted to make sure we remained very customer-centric. It was one of the characteristics of a smaller business. You are very focused around your customers. We wanted to focus on continuing to deliver what we felt was right, genuinely analysing what our clients needed, and then applying a correct solution, not just what we happen to have. We wanted to achieve that by providing a very fair and equal workplace, and we wanted to be innovative and creative in how we deliver our solutions. And finally, we wanted to attract and make sure we attracted talented, creative, empathetic individuals into our company because we wanted to be perceived as the employer of choice. And I think we've achieved that. We have a fabulous team. Those are pretty high ideals, but the fact is that we haven't just survived for 25 years in technology. We've done it by staying relevant and bringing clients new technology as it became available, coupled with new ways of doing things. When I first sat down a long time ago now and looked at defining in those traditional ways your business goals, I had a lot of trouble. The targets constantly moved. I had our goals defined around delivering specific services, laptops or servers, and then it was office or all these traditional product-focused goals. But one day it just clicked to me that while we gave our clients those things, they weren't actually the value. You could walk anywhere and buy one of those things. The thing that made us different was that what we really provided to the clients was the advice and guidance on which ones of those things they really needed and which ones worked best. Don't spend too much and buy one you don't need. Don't spend too little and underdo it. I like to think of ourselves now as we're a modern-day linguistic service. What we do is translate for you. We translate between what you need and what the products and services out there in the market are. That's actually the value of what Calibre One really provides, not the laptop we wheel in and give you. It's the advice that makes you believe, or we all understand, that that's the right one for you to have, whether it's applications, data connectivity, or physical product, it doesn't matter. It's still the hard part, is understanding what you need and making sure it's correct. So Calibre One provides the interface between all the mumbo jumbo and you. We're a trusted translator. We help you identify and obtain the right stuff. And that's fundamentally, if you get right down to it, what we've always done over all the years. Who do we look after is a common question. What sort of clients do we look after? We don't classify our clients by size. We prefer to think of them as the clients that are identified internally that they want to manage their technology and do it properly. They're our clients. You don't want to manage it, you don't want to treat it properly, it's just a thing in the corner. It's not, you're not going to get value out of us. Last slide. Border. It's on the border. It's the South Australian side of the border. All right. New technology, as you've heard, and ways of doing things change. It's almost weekly, it seems, these days. And whether we like it or not, that change is going to continue to happen. So the story of Calibre One is actually a very good example of that. 20 years ago, our business made income from the sales of hardware. We had a retail shop and we had the products there. We used to fix computers. Over time, our company grew. We grew in numbers, we grew in expertise, and as our clients grew up, and that one in the video you saw with the short home loans, and the rest started with one person. Now they've got 80 or 90. As their needs grew, we decided that we would grow and we would enhance our capabilities to follow our clients' needs. So our business evolved, and we had to make sure it evolved, otherwise those clients would have moved on. So we grew the service associated with keeping all those things running. Times were good, we made good margin out of the sale of products and services. But then, the PC becomes a commodity item. Things change. They become simpler to use. The newer versions of Windows are increasingly more user-friendly. All your kids grew up with these, and 8-year-old kids know how to use tablets and things probably better than half of us in the room. So they don't need that traditional form of technology company that we once were. That brought a whole range of change, not the least of which was the PC became a commodity item, and they turn up in Harvey Norman and buy it like a fridge. You just don't need that sort of IT company anymore. And if you think back about all the IT companies and technology companies that existed that long ago, there are very few of those companies that still exist today. And the ones that do exist today exist because they changed, and they changed fundamentally. So they embraced the change, they saw what was coming, and they transformed their businesses. And that's really what we did. If we hadn't have done that, we'd have gone away with Dodo as well. But because we identified early that our role was as a translator, that's what we did, we just kept on providing that translation service between the changing technology and you as the customer and what you needed. Just offering guidance, offering support, and holding that trusted relationship. So today, the shift to the cloud is here, well and truly, and that's changing everything again. You've heard about some of the companies. If you're in the taxi industry, Uber's probably giving you a really good hard knock on the door. Right? So they're good examples of how traditional, long-standing businesses get turned on their head by something that shifts in technology. I have one last slide here, because the guys told me I had to have at least one technical slide, so there's a technical slide. When we merged our two companies, that required a major rethink on products and the tools and things that we used within our business. So when we sat down and we looked at it, we had, before the merger, we had essentially one state, we had 23 or more servers, we had dedicated data rooms, and we used to use $5,000 of power alone in air conditioning and powering all these servers. It was monstrous. But we're an IT company, and that was how it was done. We had no common systems between the two halves of the company. So in 6 months, we transformed that. We retired 23 of those servers. We shifted entirely to cloud-based accounting. We introduced a cloud-based ticketing system. We replaced separate filing systems in the end drive that everyone has with cloud-based SharePoint systems. We replaced multiple mail servers with Office 365, and we migrated all of our sales and quoting tools to cloud-based products. So that was a major transformation, but what it allowed was it allowed us to move from a single state fixed office to a multi-state organisation with roaming people that could work literally from anywhere. So the message that I really want to get across to you is that modern business today is about change. It's about embracing the change before it steamrolls you. It's about being agile and visionary and trying to see what's going to happen in 5 and 10 years' time. But most importantly and increasingly, I think, it's actually a big part about partnering, because choosing those partners you've got, and it's a common message we've heard here today, but it's very important to have people that can look at that with you and help you understand that journey. Because if you don't make it and someone else does, you get clogged. So the close relationship that we have between us and our clients comes from a daily interaction. I mean, no one gets away without an IT department or a technology department that provides almost constant help, whether it's how do I do this, or this is broken, doesn't really matter, it's there and it happens almost daily. But what that does is it allows us to understand your business very thoroughly, and it allows us to understand the language you use in your business. Our relationships then with our suppliers like Microsoft and Telstra also allow us to understand their products and their language, because it's quite a different language sometimes. Our translational skills, if you like, then allow us to interpret on both sides those two forms of language and put it all together. And that's the value of the partnership that we believe that we bring to the table. So that's a little bit of an intro to Calibre One. So we'll start with you, Hayley. Just tell us a little bit about why we looked at Cairns to start with.
Sure. So I guess one of the things that we like to pride ourselves on in Calibre One is our relationships with customers, with vendors, but also our business partners. Certainly our biggest partner we have is Telstra, and followed closely by Microsoft. And one of the beautiful things we get to do as being part of these partnerships is go to conferences. And Microsoft and Telstra yet again connecting people. So we started chatting to one of the previous specialists who used to look after the Cairns region from the Telstra perspective many years ago. And he knew, I guess, some of our capabilities from a complex and data and IP type of work that we'd been doing over the years when he used to work for a distributor of Telstra. And he was always on us to say, basically, guys, you know, you're in Darwin, you're in Adelaide, we need your calibre of people in Cairns. Anyway, so we sort of ummed and ahed about it because we had a lot of other things going on for a little while. And then about 2 years ago, we decided to start the, I guess, official market piece for that. And it was funny once we started doing that, and it really resonated with me because, as Andrew Whiteblood from Telstra earlier mentioned, about 5 years ago I uprooted my life from Adelaide, and dogs and ex-partner included, and moved to Darwin. But prior to that I was doing fly-in, fly-out work, and it worked really, really well, and I really noticed that there was a huge opportunity, I guess, a gap in the market for an enterprise-grade partner in Darwin. And I sort of thought, yep, Cairns seems like it's got the exact same fit. And that's me, I work on my gut instinct, as opposed to my little bean counter friend here. So, so we decided to take the plunge, and we met with the previous Telstra team at that time, and we basically flew in and flew out for about a week of every month, for about 2 years. And then we knew around that mark of 2 years we'd need to really get an office here, because everyone likes to do business locally. So that's what we did in December of last year, and here we are.
Awesome. Okay, so Darren, you're our CFO, so tell us briefly why the numbers make sense to be here.
Well, unlike Hayley, I don't just go off the gut feel. Whilst I do feel that's an important thing in any kind of business decision-making process and any kind of investment and risk you're going to take, I am more methodical, obviously, in the process. So for me, looking into Cairns, when we started going through the research process of this about 2 years ago, I wanted to try and understand things like what drove the local Cairns economy, how it was affected by things like the Australian dollar going up and down, how it reacted to things like the global financial crisis when we went through it. You know, geographically, how it was laid out, how its business was laid out, and importantly, what was the competitive landscape and the infrastructure layout across here. And what was interesting kind of going through that process, I guess when I originally started at the start, Darwin had a population size at that stage only at about 130,000 and Cairns was about 160,000. And so when I first originally looked at it, I thought, okay, there's probably going to be a lot of similarities here between these two economies because fundamentally the population sizes are similar, and at the end of the day, they're both, a tropical environment. So it's just, they're probably going to be much the same. But two distinct things I quickly found from that was that from an economic point of view, Cairns' key drivers for industry were agriculture, retail and tourism. All industries are affected heavily by an Australian dollar being low, or be good, and being high, or be bad. Versus Darwin, which is a mining town, and when the dollar's high, Darwin does exceptionally well. And it was interesting to see this when I went through some of those numbers and statistics to see, Cairns at the stage when we ran the report contributed around about 7.5 billion of its GRP to the overall Queensland economy, but only about 6 years earlier, back in 2008, it had contributed around about 9.5. So it was a 20% dip in terms of what it had done over those years. And it was interesting to note when when I took a look at the Australian dollar and looked at basically the highs and lows of that, there was a very distinct pattern notable that when the Australian dollar was sitting around that $10 mark, Cairns was sitting at a 0 to negative 6% growth rate. Whereas when we went to, the start of the year 2000, and for the first 6 years, it was operating at 10 to 15% year-on-year growth when it was at that 70 to 80 cent mark. So I guess what kind of came out of that for me is then starting to look at Cairns' recovery on the other end. I started looking at things like building approvals in both the commercial and residential area to understand, how Cairns have basically reacted in terms of construction. 8% of Cairns' economy today is based on the construction industry. So if the construction industry is doing well here, that's a good pointer towards the overall economy. And when I had a look at some of those numbers, not only did I see that there had been 3 times growth in that area since 2013 through to 2015, but there'd also been an increase in the real estate market around about 14%, when Cairns' economy in real estate had dipped by about 30% in the previous 6 years. So all those markers financially, anyway, and coming back to obviously Hayley's point, part of a gut feel, mine may be more methodical, but when I looked at all those numbers, I saw an economy that may have been hurt significantly by the GFC, and then further to that, the mining boom with a high Australian dollar hit again in its key areas of tourism and retail. But since that Australian dollar's come down, and since the rest of the world, in a sense, has kind of moved forward past that date, the economy here, I think, is really prime in terms of a great recovery and a great economy in general. Now, the other thing that I kind of also noted through that was more of the telecommunications side of things, and I think it kind of been said today in Phil's talk, where he kind of spoken a little bit to the factor of Cairns and communications and connectivity, but Telstra has really been the only investor in the far north Queensland economy and region in terms of telecommunication infrastructure for really the last couple of decades. I mean, of course, there are the Optuses and the Vodafones and the others around, but the footprint in terms of coverage that Telstra had compared to any of them is far superior and far greater. But that has also then led to the fact that none of the other carriers have necessarily been willing to invest. It's led to a lack of competition within the local market, which meant pricing has been a restriction for many businesses of many sizes in terms of getting great speed, solid connectivity and reliability at that top-end marketplace. So in a sense, that has then dragged Cairns back from a technology point of view to be looking at and investing in services like Office 365 and utilising and moving their workloads from on-premise to the cloud, because simply put, your connectivity has not been up to the speed you need it to be, and the investment to make has been too great. So I think there are two things for me in terms of why Cairns is a great place in terms of us to start looking at. One, I think the economy is going to start doing amazingly over coming years to come, especially if that Australian dollar stays low. But two, with the increase of NBN connectivity all across Cairns, and with the lowering of the costings now from carriers due to that competition, I think Cairns is in a perfect position to start utilising those cloud services that the likes of Sydney, Melbourne and the rest have really done kind of, I guess, probably in the last 5 years. You guys are now at that stage now.
Awesome.
Was that too long? Sorry. I tried to cram it all in there.
So what that really says is that he took 15 times longer to arrive at the same conclusion. but a much sounder basis on which to actually go ahead and invest in what it takes to establish a local office. So guys, where do you see the Calibre One Queensland journey then going from here?
start that one. So our strategy, Calibre One, is to develop or to build a national service delivery partner network, certainly focusing as much as we can in the regional areas, because we do see there's a bit of a lack of, I guess, an enterprise-grade partner in those areas. So we knew that once we had Cairns up and running, we really do have the other areas within Far North Queensland on our roadmap. So the first one, I believe, will be Townsville. So we're planning on really getting an office, an actual physical location arranged in Townsville in the next 6 to 12 months. And then the ability from that is to actually extend our footprint all throughout greater FNQ as well.
Yeah, it was interesting when I was talking about the competitive landscape, where we noted that from a Far North Queensland perspective and from a managed IT services provider space, which is obviously where we fitted, we noted that many of the IT industry itself here in terms of local providers was very fragmented. There was a lot of small providers rather than any one significant provider. And that seemed to be the case across both Townsville and across Cairns. Many IT providers here may have had one man or two men kind of down in Townsville, so to speak, and vice versa, but there was no significant presence of teams locally in both of those. So I think it was kind of really one of the areas where we kind of, I guess, see a place that we can fit is if we can provide that local team capability across the region in totality, then we can really provide those businesses that may be headquartered in Cairns with offices in Townsville or vice versa and across the FNQ region, that we can basically provide overall better support, better assistance and hopefully better advice, talking to your comments before.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Doug, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about Airbridge and the things you do and your background.
My background? Okay, well, I suppose, unlike a lot of the people in the room, and certainly some of the people up here in Calibre One, I never expected that I was going to end up in the IT arena. And in fact, much like Phil from Microsoft, I'd planned on being a pilot. So there I was straight out of high school, turning up at the Cairns airport, and I said, I'm ready to fly. Well, I quickly found out that was an expensive piece of undertaking to go through. So I said to my dad, I said, I need to find a way to make some money so that I can do this flying thing. He said, well, maybe you should look at IT. I said, that's what the geeks do, right? He said, yeah, IT. He said, I think this internet thing's going to take off just quietly. I said, yeah, I don't know. He said, yeah, no, it's going to take off. You should definitely do that. So I wandered into a local supplier and I said, I'm going to work as a technician until you think I'm worth paying. So he took a couple of weeks to convince, but eventually put me on. It was just enough to sort of cut my teeth on technology and finish my pilot's license. But when I finished flying, I kind of went, you know what, I'm enjoying this IT thing. I might give this a go. So I went down the certification path with Microsoft and Cisco, CompTIA, Citrix, and for those in the room that are old enough, the old Novell, they certified in Novell. That's an awesome piece of paperwork to hang up. Went into private enterprise and started looking after a lot of the businesses. In fact, I see some very familiar faces around here, names that pop up that I haven't seen for sort of 10 or 12 years working on their computers. Then went across to the United States, where I was appointed Director of IT for a web design and marketing firm. So I got a couple of years on the international scale. Back into Australia, saw me land a role as the Chief Information Officer for the Torres Strait Island Regional Council. So I started to get a real good understanding of what it meant to deliver communications into regional and remote areas. After filling that role, I went on to work with Telstra. So I got to see the other side of the coin, what are carrier networks, MPLS networks, get a good understanding of what that all looked like. And we'll speak to this a little later on, but what I did identify is what Andrew Wildblood spoke of before, and of course what Phil mentioned, connectivity is key. Connectivity is key. We can't establish anything unless we get that connectivity piece. So I formally launched Airbridge Networks in 2016, and I'll speak a bit more about that. But having now partnered and joined forces with Calibre One, I find myself on the stage answering unknown questions from our CEO. So I'll hand back at the end of that, I think.
All right. So now we'll give Joe a turn. Joe?
So my name is Joe, and I'm an alcoholic. Got a few here in the room with me, I'm sure, in FNQ. So as Steve mentioned earlier, I grew up in Tasmania, and no, I don't have my scar anymore. I started as an admin trainee down in Tassie working for a training organisation. I as Steve also mentioned earlier, I had a real passion for problem solving. I sort of feel like I've got one of those male brains in a female body. I just love fixing things. So I was following around the IT consultant every time he came into our organisation to find out what he did to fix something. It just became my thing. And next minute I became the IT person for the organisation. I put myself through a diploma in IT eventually, did 10 years at the organisation. I became the IT manager, had a small group of people working for me, and we rolled out a network around Australia. After that, one of my former employees actually poached me and I moved over to the Launceston City Council, which was the largest council in Tasmania. I did a couple of years there doing systems improvements for those guys. After that, I had one of my other employees actually poach me as well. That took me over to Guns, where I was doing anything from crawling under desks, installing POS terminals, to managing the data centre there as well as the team. Then I decided to apply for a position with a former ICT provider in Tasmania as a systems administrator. And the manager there called me back. I got my second interview. I got all excited to tell me that I'd actually been unsuccessful for the role. As gutted as I was, he turned around and said, well, actually, Joe, I've got another role in mind for you. I'd like you to lead up our Northern Tasmanian team as a business development manager. I looked at this guy and said, mate, I'm a tech, I don't do sales, seriously. Back then I hated salespeople with a passion. He asked me seriously to think about it over the weekend, which I did, and I came back and thought, I've done 12 years in IT, let's give this a go. My previous experience with other providers was pretty poor, so I wanted to sit on the other side and actually deliver the services that I really wanted to receive. So I took on the role with Alpha West. We built the business in the north from $0 to $5 million. I was then allocated a portfolio of 29 councils. And yes, there are 29 councils in Tasmania for a population of 500,000. Then became my biggest challenge in Alpha West. So Alpha West were actually owned by Optus, and I had to start selling Optus products. Luckily for me, before that came around, I got a call from the Telstra guys, and I moved over to the Telstra team. I did 6 months in Tasmania with Telstra until my husband and I were sitting back on the deck one day having a few bevies, debating life. I had a bucket list item that one day I wanted to move to Palm Cove. I'd holidayed there a few times. I absolutely fell in love with it. We sat back and said, what's stopping us? You know, I've only got my 2 children, my 32-year-old husband and my 9-year-old dog. So I looked on the internet for jobs. Here was my Telstra role available in Cairns. I made the phone call. Within the week I had the job, and within the month we moved. So that's pretty much me, as hopefully a few of you in the room can attest. I've worked with quite a few of you now for the last couple of years. I'm determined on meeting your business challenges. It's my passion. I've still got that problem fixing. I still want to hear what your business challenges are and help with that in the new role with Calibre One.
Awesome. It almost needs applause. And I like anyone that can pick up their life and move within a month. I spent 25 years in the Air Force and I moved nearly 30 times. So I know all about moving and how much work it is. Aidan, your turn.
Well, is this on? Can I have this one? Yeah, swap that. Yeah, well, you've pretty much summed it up previously, but when I graduated high school in 2010, they asked me to stay on as an IT systems technician for Education Queensland. I managed 3 schools in the region on the Atherton Tablelands, which is a short drive up the hill there, and I managed about 1,000 users up there. So I did that until 2015, where I decided that I needed to go down and start university. I've started at James Cook University doing a Bachelor of Business, majoring in Business Intelligence and Information Systems. I then joined a managed service provider in town here, and I got to experience all sorts of different products, such as Microsoft Office 365, cloud computing, the Telstra's managed services, all of those. Lots of remote work up north into the communities, such as Mornington Island and Doomadgee. And then, the opportunity with Calibre One came up, and here we are today.
Thanks, guys. All right, so just a couple more questions we'll go through in terms of introducing the local team. But Doug and Joe, you're both new to Calibre One. What is it that
makes Calibre One different that you see for being out new?
Well, Steve, I heard there was motorbikes. I mean, there was little more for me.
Yes.
The CEO rides motorbikes around the country. I thought, well, this is the shoe-in for me. I got this. No, look, as I said, I've 20 years in IT, and one consistent strain I acknowledged throughout all my capacities, and that's the disjointed nature of the ICT operation. This is the server platform, this is the user platform, this is the network platform, this is the application side. That's not my problem, it belongs to that person. No, that person's unavailable, it must be over here somewhere. And then, of course, when there's no one else to blame, it's just, must be Telstra, it must be their side. So it was one of those ones where it caused constant frustration, not only for me in my capacities, but for customers that I would assist with. One of the things I was quick to note with Calibre One, and we've spoken about it a couple of times, and we made a couple of references in the slide packs beforehand, and that's the holistic view in which they view ICT. It's the user that has the problem on the screen, doesn't care if it's the switch or the router or the operating system or the server environment. They don't care what that is. All they see is the error message on the screen, and they want that fixed. The breadth that Calibre One has the capacity to put the appropriate person on the job and push it to its conclusion. And the enterprise partnership means that we speak the same language when it comes to talking to the carrier side to resolve that problem.
Excellent. Thank you. Joe, do you want to add to that? Or
Yeah, look, I had the privilege of working with the Calibre One team when I moved to Cairns. They were already working on some of the customer base that I took over. They reminded me very much of the team that I'd been working with in Tasmania. So very much a regional focus, very much a professional team. And to echo as well what Doug said, just that whole of business, everything they can do, from right through to the mobiles, to the carriage, to the managed service provider. So it's, they can pretty much do anything and everything, Telstra and beyond. They also have their own onshore project managers, so people that talk English to you in plain English, and to reiterate what Steve said earlier, we're just those people that can turn all of that technical jargon around for you and put it in layman's terms for the customer.
Awesome. Aidan, your turn. What made you want to join Calibre One?
Well, when I was sitting through the interview processes, I just sort of noted that Hayley and Darren over there, they were very passionate and driven. I knew Doug from a previous engagement with the other managed service provider in town. They were just very passionate and driven, and they would help me to grow my career in the IT industry. And that was something that was quite important to me, and so far they've lived up to those expectations.
Well, great, thanks. So what I'm going to do now is just ask Joe and Doug to share a few success stories with us. So starting with you, Doug.
A success story. I think what I want to do is probably, I'll reference a problematic customer that we had, and not that the customer itself was problematic, but the situation was. It's how I spoke before about, is this a network issue, is it an application issue? Nobody really cares. There's a problem that needs to be resolved. So in this specific instance, it was a very regional community in North Queensland that had some connectivity issues, and there was concerns around routing, it was concerns around VLANing, it was concerns around is the device itself appropriately configured and who has the skill set to fix that. It was a great experience for me to be able to draw on the greater Calibre One team to say, I need the resources from Telstra to be looking directly at this FNN. Here's the details, here's the VLAN addressing, here's the subnet information, here's the routing table. Please go and have a look at that. I need the switching experts to go in there and check the configuration and make sure they're being propagated, is PoE enabled, and then be able to have someone that could effectively communicate with the customer and say, look, we understand your concerns, here's what the timeline looks like to resolution. So for me, whilst it was an undertaking where we had a distressed customer, I think it highlights all the points we spoke about in being able to come together as a team and effectively resolve an issue.
Thanks, Dave. Joe?
Rather than me talk all about, I suppose, a success story, I'd actually like to hand over to some of my customers that we basically did a little bit of interview with to see what their experience is with Calibre One to date. I'd like to thank a few of you in the room as well. I think we've only got Martin with us today, but we've also, I think, Calum down the bottom there too, and Carwin, who couldn't make it today, unfortunately. So I'm going to thank those guys in advance, and let's hear from them.
We've been working with Calibre One for the last year, and they've been assisting us looking for solutions to assist with projects and other items within C-Swift. Calibre One seem to be very responsive. We've noticed that anytime we request information, they generally respond on the same day, and if the information isn't readily available, they come back to us as soon as possible. So experience today has been very good. The move to Office 365 has been very good for us as a business. We've been able to move some of our workloads off premises into the cloud, that being Exchange and also SharePoint were the two big ones that were pretty resource heavy in-house. It's also provided the opportunity for us to look at new additional features like Skype for Business, and also OneDrive for our mobile workforce. So I've been able to consolidate a lot of their files across all of their devices, and they're finding that to be a very useful tool. Calibre One have a regional presence, which is of great interest to us as we have diverse depots around Australia. We have offices in Darwin and remote areas in Northern Territory and Queensland and the Torres Strait. As they are familiar with the challenges in these areas, they've been able to offer us some good advice towards technologies that are available in these areas.
Office 365 for us has been a godsend. We're spread out over 1,300 kilometres, 350 k's down to Townsville, 800 kilometres up to Horn Island, office in Weipa, office here, everything connected via the internet, via now a private network, but even from home, on mobiles, on tablets and laptops, we can all access our files, our emails. It's an Exchange online. Love OneNote, Word, Excel. We've been using them for years. Wrapped with Office 365. Have simplified things, and even as recently as yesterday, something that was not understood by me even, I say 2 weeks ago, it was put in my too hard basket. In the space of a phone call yesterday, it was all resolved. So I'm very happy with our association with Calibre One.
We chose to work with Calibre One because the solutions they provided and brought to us were not only cost effective, but unlike the other proposals, actually ended up saving us money in the long run. The reliability of the system is outstanding. We've only lodged 2 support tickets in the last year and a half, as opposed to 1 a month with our previous provider. And the 2 support tickets we did lodge were solved in a matter of days. Thanks to Calibre One's new digital phone system, we've been able to cut down calls to incorrect departments by 60%, allowing our staff to focus more on their jobs and their roles rather than answering the phone call and transferring them to another department. Overall, I've found the entire Calibre One team, from sales and technical and support, to be above and beyond anything we have had previously working with any other organisation, and we would highly recommend them.
But Aidan, tell us about how you offer value to our local clients.
Well, I think the Cairns presence will be quite good for the Calibre One team. I'll be out there offering hands-on technical support to all of the Cairns clients. I think that shows value in itself, moreover the remote model. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of you guys out here. So,
awesome. Thank you very much, guys. I hope what I've tried to do here is give you, obviously, introducing the local team and the people who are on the ground here. But Calibre One is much more than just these 3 guys. So the whole Calibre One team, we do operate at a national level. So behind these guys, we have a whole engineering structure, we have a whole sales structure, we have a whole account management structure.
We have a quite large resource in our help desk and direct support team who live down in Adelaide, but they do a lot of the remote management and the monitoring of systems and answering phones. So the depth of support that these guys have behind them is what enables us to deliver those types of services all around Australia and into the remote areas. So even if we don't have someone on the field, we've got the resource and the knowledge and the expertise behind the guys. So they have that as well. So a very good local team that provides you with the face and the personalities, and behind them a large and resourceful team. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
When we first met Doug and his company Airbridge, that to me gave us an immediate synergy. I looked at that and thought, there's a missing part. You know, there's a story there, there's a synergy there on how Calibre One and our partners with Telstra, we can actually deliver services better to those people. So what I'd like to do now is hand over to Doug. Doug's the MD of Airbridge Networks, as you know, and he'll give you a brief rundown on Airbridge and how that fits into the whole equation.
So I'm going to echo what I said just a few moments ago, and I think it's a pertinent point to make. All of the technology we talk about with regards to digital transformation is fundamentally reliant on connectivity. There's no exception to that. You can't have technology without connectivity anymore. It just doesn't work. Okay, so the Airbridge story, really, in order to try and give it some true depth, I've got to kind of go back and start from the beginning. And I know that's painful, having listened to our entire life story, and I'm going to try and cut it back a little bit for you. So, well, look at these guys. You might see one of those guys. He has much less of a beard in the crowd today. But so this is myself and Andrew. These are the guys that these are the guys that started off Airbridge. In 2010, Telstra invested heavily in the Torres Strait Island Regional Council. They invested with the view to create a network for the people and constituents of the area. At the time, Andrew and I were charged with delivering that network as the CIO and chief technician. With 300 users and 16 locations, it was no easy feat. Once the network was delivered, it worked exactly as Telstra promised, and everyone was happy. We were about to put our feet on the desk when we were called into the Corporate Services Manager's office and said, hey guys, well done, but what about all these other sites? So we've got the council offices connected, but what about the airport? What about the Works Depot, the Health and Aged Care Centre? What about the library? What about all these other facilities? We need them connected. And well, it's an island. There's no copper, there's no fibre, there's no way of connecting them. He said, well, have I got a deal for you? Here's $2,000, do some R&D. $2,000. Do some research and development on how to connect all of these facilities in a point to multi-point configuration attached to an IP WAN that's in the Torres Strait. All right, we'll give it a go. We looked at the technology that was available. We tried mesh networks, we've tried microwave networks, we tried radio networks, and what we noticed is that we were at a bit of a tipping point in 2010 for wireless technology. It wasn't just the 10 meg service or the 20 meg service. We started getting some really impressive numbers. We started to get a layer 2 connection that was 500 meg, right? So that's pretty cool. So I recall here on Grafton Street, up on level 4, one end of the building, sitting there with a dish, pointing it at my esteemed colleague here, and I had the other one, and we set up a ping, and we started getting replies. We thought, we've actually done this. This is fantastic, right? So that put us on a plane, and up we went, over to Mobiag. And we were going to give it a red-hot go and see if it worked. So we rolled the first of what is now known as Airbridge out at that location, and it worked. So the next question we had was, well, the connection's there. What else can we do? Well, we could put a tippet phone on it. Well, that's handy. Let's do that. Well, what about CCTV? Yeah, we can put a camera on it as well. Oh, okay. Could we do video conferencing? Absolutely. Layer 2, all the VLAN information is transported. All of the QoS information is transported. Everything worked. We came back pretty proud of ourselves, and they said, okay, so go ahead and roll this out 40 more times, would you? Sure, love to. So, what is the Airbridge? Well, it's connectivity where no connectivity is. That's purely the easiest way to think about it. So if you said, okay, I've got a connection here, and that's the boundary to which I can get my Telstra connection, but I need to get it over there. Picture over there is not a kilometre away. It's not 2 kilometres away. What about if it was 50 kilometres away? What if it's 100 kilometres away and we can deliver that at 2 gig? That's an entire game changer, right? But not just once, but 20 times. Right? So what does that actually open you up to? And this is hilarious. We'd finished a rollout and we were sitting up on the northern rocks and we could see Papua New Guinea, and we're having a bit of a giggle as the sun was setting because we're seeing these councillors doing the Lion King trying to get a mobile signal. Does everyone know what to do the Lion King is? That's where you take a mobile phone and do that one. Right? And this is what they were doing the wander around. We thought, we've got to help some more people here. There's some room for growth, right? Started getting attention from state libraries. We started getting attention from other councils. We started getting attention from private industry, healthcare providers, mining and logistics companies. So that was pretty cool. So again, we started to refine the process, started to push it out. So as you see in this slide here, if we take into consideration the slide that's delivered on the bottom right, ADSL was an acceptable technology 10 years ago, right? Everybody was happy when they didn't have to hear those 33.6 or the 56K modems scream at them and connect and then go to the next program and then the next program and, oh, you didn't load okay, we didn't load the protocol set correctly and that fell over, so you try again. ADSL came in, that was fantastic. So we go through ADSL. That's the bottom one. Then there's NBN. Then you start looking at the airbridge, the airbridge stats there. Have a look at that top one. Well, doesn't that really dwarf the NBN? Now, don't be misled. This isn't a replacement for carriage. This is an extension of carriage. But inter-site communications can run at a much higher speed. Now that's important when you start looking at the next iteration of CCTV. So Telstra has partnered with a couple of companies to deliver CCTV offerings, AFN and the like, and they're doing some really smart stuff. So they're looking at the CCTV feed and saying, well, it's not just pictures anymore, it's pictures and audio. Yes, but we can put some analytics across that and say, show me groups of people where there's males between the ages of 25 and 35 in a grouping larger than, say, 8, between the hours of 9 p.m. and 12 o'clock. Well, that's pretty powerful, right? So you can now start saying, where is our most likely chance of a problematic occurrence to take place? So we start looking at things like, making a safer community and making business decisions based on true live data. Now, I can't take all the praise for that type of technology, but what it does tell me is that if I need to observe that environment, I can now observe it anywhere. I'm not bound by the confines of a signal, or where there's copper, or where there's fibre, or where there's NBN, or any other carriage type, right? Now, getting more, as I said, to the nuts and bolts of it, the top right gives, an indication of what it can look like. All right, so we've got our connectivity, our point, our fibre, our robust Telstra MPLS tail. We can broadcast that out to multiple sites. Again, health and aged care centres. These are all sites that we've rolled out and successfully delivered. Health and aged care is a real big one because as we start looking at Indigenous health and we start looking at Telstra's telehealth offering, we can now get experts right into the heart of communities, into areas where typically people would have to travel hundreds and hundreds of kilometres to get to, and we put that person in touch with the person that needs the most, right? That's the powerful offering that we've, I guess, I'd like to say we stumbled upon, because initially this was a piece of work that we were both thinking, do we really have to do this, right? Okay. Now, let's say we've built that network, okay? Every single node has the same unified experience. Why? Because it's layer 2, and the geeks in the room will understand what layer 2 is versus layer 3 and so forth. But for the point of the matter is, it is one singular, or, for redundancy purposes, high availability link that has the capacity to give every user on the network the same unified experience. Now that's important, because if we take dissimilar networks, whereby the head site might have a fibre, That site might have a BDSL, that one's got an ADSL, that one's got an XG connector. And, you know, Phil makes a valid point before about who wants to be sitting down programming VPNs across public networks. It's painful, it's cumbersome, it's annoying, right? So you've got people that are going to work at a specific location and going, oh, this is crap, I can't get my work done, it's slow, it's horrible, and crap. I'm unhappy with my job. And Joe Blogg's over there, he's sitting at the head office, and he's got the fibre connection. Look how great his connection is, or what makes him so much better. Unhappy staff, all those sorts of things, right? All of those go away. So what we do is we take that big Telstra dial there, that might be our fibre dial. Thank you, Aidan, for putting that one together for me. And you turn it up. So we talked before about a 20/20 connection. That's cool, right? 20/20 connection across 10 different sites, right? Allows for a real nice dynamic flow of dimensioning. We can look at it and say, what's the aggregate total of all of our users' network footprint? Well, it's getting a little high. Just turn it up a notch. It's fibre. We can turn it up a notch. So you turn it to 50/50, right? When you do the math on it and you say, well, yeah, it's a 50/50 connection, and I feel like it's a bit expensive. If I distribute that across all of my sites, in fact, it's actually a cheap offering. So why don't we go for 100/100? Well, now we're really talking, because if we've got 100/100, we can go burn all of our servers. We can go completely in the cloud, software as a service, OpEx, move to new technologies, adopt the mobile platforms that we're trying to really empower all of the communities, all of Australia, to be part of this digital transformation. I'm getting that look that says, hurry up, Doug, you're taking too long. Here is, I guess, what a single site looks like now. I typically use the pointer thing, but it's not going to do any good today. This is the location right in the tip of Queensland. So this is Ingenuine, and I'm happy to say we've got the Northern Peninsula Area Regional Council ICT Manager with us here today. Whilst I promised I wasn't going to call upon her, I'll make reference to the network only. Now, a couple of years ago, this was just a single site, same as we discussed before, one single site, a couple of disjointed connections here. Some people could work, some couldn't. And whilst I could go into the whole plethora of social outcomes when it comes to technology adoption, who has access to what, and their ability to low and grow in a working environment, I'll stop to say that all of the users at that head site now have the same experience at all of those subsequent sites. So what have we got? There's a ranger base, a service station. You've got the CEO's house. There's a couple of those, just for what it's worth. Staff housing, ladies' dongers. There's a concrete batching plant, a carpenter's workshop. So you're telling me that I can go to work, I can go to the carpenter's workshop and have the exact same unified experience as though I'd gone to the council chambers, right? So how does that empower all of the staff there? They all feel equal, they all feel valued, and they all, again, have that same experience. So who's using this stuff, right? Well, we thought it would be really cool if we could talk to local government, because they seemed like a really good fit. But all these other industry verticals came out of the woodwork after we started rolling this out. I mentioned state libraries, medical and healthcare facilities. We've got a couple of healthcare providers in our portfolio at the moment. Mining and main roads are using it so that they can put high definition CCTV in areas that would be corrosive to humans, I guess. Oh, corrosive is the right word. Retail and tourism operators are using this. And this is a really cool piece, because we've got someone with us today, I won't mention any names, but they came up with a great idea and said, hey, this Airbridge stuff, does it have to be a building? And I was intrigued. I'm like, what do you mean? Could we put it on a car? Could we put it on a boat? Yeah, we can put it on a boat. Why wouldn't we put it on a boat, right? What if, for example, we could put a series of stations around Australia, and as the vessel went around, the tip of Carpentaria, or the Gulf of Carpentaria, and continued to make, let's call it an NBN or a Telstra IP-WAN internet or network connection as it went around. Well, that's a real thing. We can actually do that. So what does that mean, say, for argument's sake, going to Green Island or Fitzroy Island or Agincourt Reef or any of these other places? It means that we can do high-definition video on the bridge. Who's doing what, right? We can offer Wi-Fi, and the extension of that is then now a customised app. We can push an app out to the user and say, while you're here, look for this, 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 and this. This is an endangered turtle. This is what the crown of thorns looks like, reported if you see it. Some really, really smart stuff there, right? We can also push those out into communities and say, as you attach to the Wi-Fi in this area where we've put it on a schedule, because that's where we want people to be, driving those social behaviours, stay away from the boat ramp. Keep your children away from the boat ramp because there's a crocodile. Now, that's a real statement that we've pushed out. Keep your children away. So now we're looking after community service, right? So these are all industry verticals that have an application for this technology. And I have to put this one here. Most importantly, I have to be honest, my son watches Netflix in the shed via an airbridge, so he absolutely made sure I had to do that. He's got his little airbridge hat on there. He's a big fan. So who are our customers? Well, in the last 2 years, we've put on an additional 400 airbridge sites across Queensland. We're now in Queensland, South Australia, and Northern Territory rollouts. We've got opportunities in all states across Australia, with the exclusion of Tasmania. Jo's not doing a very good job there, ringing up her friends. But that includes now, I should update that, now 14 regional councils. 14 councils are now running the airbridge product. 14 councils, and growing. Everywhere we go into a community, we say, how's the network performing? Network's great. It's robust. It's reliable. It's doing everything we want. We want to do digital transformation. We want to be part of the technology movement of this millennium. Why is Joe Bloggs over there sitting on an XG connection that's 200 kilometres out of town and he's struggling? Why aren't we doing something for him? Why doesn't everybody deserve that? It shouldn't be a luxury to have connectivity anymore. It just shouldn't. Everybody should have connectivity. Everyone should be able to appreciate what Telstra's built, what Microsoft has built, and what the rest of the world is enjoying. This is a great photo. I love this photo. So these are some kids in Arakoon, the social outcomes that come from delivering a technology such as this is amazing. When you fire a laptop up or you fire an iPad up and you hand it to them and say, here, have a look at this. Look at what you can do. And they start taking photos of each other and start sharing the stuff. That's an amazing thing to achieve. It's no small feat. I spoke about the unified user experience. Everybody has the same experience. So there's no more the haves and the have-nots, right? You can drive specific behaviours. You can put an air bridge at a boat ramp to make sure there's no boat rage. I mean, this is a thing, right? So boat ramp rage is now a thing. Get your boat out of the way. I'm getting mine in. We're going to miss the fish. You can put it there if you need to. You can put it in an area that you want to monitor permanently, or you can put it in an area that you want to spin up Wi-Fi. Briefly, you can put it in a park and then light it up on a schedule. So you can say that in a community, you want to provide Wi-Fi in a designated area and then have it on a schedule so that you know that all of the people within a specific demographic and a specific age set will be in that area for that period of time. You can then get some feedback. What are they looking at, right? You take away the inability to obtain additional learning and employment because they have access to all of those services now. So from a local government perspective, you can really start speaking to where the funding buckets come from. Disaster and resiliency, being able to, in the event of a catastrophic failure, so if we said that there's a cyclone coming and a council has had the fortitude and foresight to put in an ITERA solution, we can now broadcast that to a local school or an area that is appropriate to have people congregate and have access to those services. I'm not going to go through all of those. They're fairly straightforward. This is just a little bit around our capability portfolio. So whilst we started talking about putting specific air bridges in, so a connection from one location to another, that quickly extended into cabling services, both copper and fibre. That, of course, led to us being able to do trenching. We've got trenching and civil and other earthworks. We've successfully rolled out a large number of enterprise Wi-Fi solutions, mesh networks for public consumption, and in some areas where there's simply no connectivity and no power, we've got a full offered solar offering now as well. So just a little bit more about us there. Thanks for the time, guys. I really appreciate it.